The stars had always called to Park Do-hyun. Even as a child growing up in the crowded streets of Busan, he would climb to the roof of his apartment building and stare at the night sky. He dreamed of what lay beyond. Now, at 34 years old, he stood on the observation deck of the research vessel Horizon and watched an alien world grow larger through the window. The planet was called Calaris Prime. It hung in space like a pearl wrapped in clouds of pale blue and silver. 3 moons circled it slowly. Do-hyun had studied pictures of this world for months, but seeing it with his own eyes made his heart beat faster. "Beautiful, isn't it?" said a voice behind him. He turned to find Dr. Kim Yuna walking toward him. She was the ship's chief medical officer, a small woman with sharp eyes and a quick mind. They had worked together for 5 years now. "More than beautiful," Do-hyun replied. "This is history. First contact with an intelligent alien species." Yuna stood beside him and looked at the planet. "The Kellery have been watching us for decades. They know we're coming. I wonder what they think of us. Probably that we're primitive," Do-hyun said with a small laugh. "Their civilization is over 10,000 years old. Ours has barely reached the stars. The Horizon had received the invitation 6 months ago. A signal from deep space, translated by Earth's best linguists. The Kelari Empire wished to meet humanity. No one knew why. Some politicians called it a trap. Others called it an opportunity. In the end, curiosity won. The ship carried 50 scientists, 20 diplomats, and 30 security officers. Do-hyun was part of the science team, specializing in xenobiology. His job was to study alien life. He never imagined he would be meeting it face to face. The landing shuttle descended through the clouds 2 days later. Do-hyun sat near the window, watching the alien landscape appear below. Cities of crystal and stone spread across valleys and mountains. Towers reached toward the sky like fingers grasping at the heavens. Rivers of silver liquid wound through the land. "Their architecture is incredible," Yuna whispered. The shuttle landed in a courtyard of polished white stone. When the doors opened, Do-hyun took his first breath of alien air. It smelled faintly of flowers and metal. The Kelari were waiting for them. They were tall, almost 7 feet, with skin that shimmered like silver in the sunlight. Their eyes were large and completely black, showing no whites at all. They had no hair, but delicate ridges ran across their skulls in patterns unique to each individual. They wore robes of deep blue and purple, decorated with symbols Do-hyun could not read. One of them stepped forward. This Kelari was female, older than the others. She carried herself with the weight of authority. "I am Queen Velith," she said. Her voice was deep and musical. "Ruler of the Kelari Empire, welcome to our world." The diplomats exchanged greetings and formal words. Do-hyun stood in the back, observing everything. He noticed how the Kelari guards watched the humans with suspicion. He noticed the empty spaces in their formation, as if they expected more people to fill them. He noticed the sadness in Queen Velith's eyes, hidden behind her regal mask. Something was wrong here. The humans were given quarters in the palace. The rooms were large and beautiful, filled with strange furniture and soft light. But Do-hyun could not sleep that first night. He wandered the corridors, studying the artwork on the walls. The paintings showed Kelari history, great battles, and peaceful times. Cities being built, and festivals being celebrated. But the newer paintings were different. They showed empty nurseries, silent playgrounds, funeral processions stretching for miles. "You see it," a voice said. Do-hyun turned quickly. Queen Velith stood in the shadows, watching him. "I'm sorry," he said. "I didn't mean to intrude." "You are a scientist," she said, stepping into the light. "Scientists observe. It is their nature." She looked at the paintings. "These tell the story of our dying. Since, as they reasoned, we can see had a sides that we are like." Do-hyun felt a chill run down his spine. "Dying? A plague struck us 40 years ago," Velith explained. Her voice was steady, but her hands trembled slightly. It does not kill directly. Instead, it destroys our ability to reproduce. Our females can no longer bear children. Those who try. She paused. The infants do not survive. The pleaded, Mai Ling. I'm so sorry, Do-hyun said quietly. We have tried everything, Velith continued. Our greatest scientists have worked for decades. Nothing has worked. We have 3 generations left, perhaps 4. Then the Kalari will exist only in memory. Do-hyun's mind raced. Is that why you invited us? Do you think we can help? Velith looked at him. Her black eyes seemed to hold entire galaxies of sorrow. We invited you because we were curious. We have watched your species grow. You are young and strange and violent, but you are also resilient. The next morning, Do-hyun told Yuna everything. They spent hours discussing possibilities. Yuna ran tests on Kalari, genetic samples that the aliens provided. What she found shocked them both. Their DNA is remarkably similar to ours, Yuna said, staring at her screen. Not identical, but compatible. The basic structure is almost the same. How is that possible? Do-hyun asked. I don't know. Parallel evolution? Ancient common ancestors? It shouldn't be possible. But here it is. She looked at him with wide eyes. Do-hyun. Human DNA has a unique quality. It adapts faster than any genetic material I've ever seen. If we could somehow combine it with Kalari genetics, you think we could cure them? I think we could do more than that. Yuna said slowly. I think humans and Kalari might be able to reproduce together. The idea was insane. It was impossible. But Yuna's data did not lie. Do-hyun took the findings to the diplomatic team. They argued for days. Some called the idea offensive. Others called it their duty to help. In the end, they decided to present the option to Queen Velith. She listened in silence. When Yuna finished explaining, the queen stood and walked to her window. She looked out at her dying world for a long time. You are offering to save us, she finally said. But at what cost? We would no longer be pure Kalari. Our children would be something new, something mixed. They would be alive, Do-hyun said simply. Velith turned to face him. For the first time, he saw a crack in her royal composure. For just a moment, she was not a queen. She was a mother who had buried 3 daughters. I must think on this, she said. Leave me. The humans left. But Do-hyun paused at the door and looked back. Queen Velith stood alone in the fading light, her silver skin glowing softly. She looked small. She looked tired. She looked like someone who had run out of options. Do-hyun walked away. But he could not shake the image from his mind. Somewhere in his heart, a decision was already forming. He did not know it yet, but his life was about to change forever. 3 weeks passed after the meeting with Queen Velith. The human delegation continued their diplomatic work, but there was no answer from the palace about Yuna's proposal. Do-hyun tried to focus on his research, but his mind kept wandering back to the queen standing alone at her window. News came from across the empire. Another city had gone dark. The last residents had died or moved away. The buildings stood empty now, monuments to a future that would never come. Do-hyun saw the reports on the Kalari news broadcasts. The faces of the presenters showed no emotion, but their voices carried the weight of grief. How can they just accept this? Do-hyun asked Yuna one evening. How can they watch their civilization die and do nothing? They're not doing nothing. Yuna replied. They've been fighting for 40 years. They're exhausted. Sometimes, acceptance is all that's left. I refuse to believe that. Yuna looked at him carefully. You've gotten attached, haven't you? To this place. To them. Do-hyun didn't answer. But they both knew the truth. The message came at midnight. A Kalari servant appeared at Do-hyun's door. dressed in simple white robes. "The queen requests your presence," the servant said. Alone, Do-hyun followed the servant through the winding corridors of the palace. They walked for nearly an hour, descending deeper into the ancient structure. Finally, they reached a small door, carved with symbols of two hands clasped together. "Through here," the servant said, and then disappeared into the shadows. Do-hyun opened the door. The room beyond was simple compared to the rest of the palace. A small fire burned in a stone hearth. Cushions were arranged on the floor. Queen Velith sat among them, her royal robes replaced by a simple gray dress. Without her crown and jewelry, she looked almost ordinary. "Almost. Please sit," she said, gesturing to a cushion across from her. Do-hyun sat. The fire crackled between them. "I have not slept well since our last meeting," Velith began. "Your doctor's proposal haunts me. It offers hope. But hope is a dangerous thing. It can hurt more than despair." "I understand," Do-hyun said. "Do you?" Velith leaned forward, her black eyes reflecting the flames. "My generals, tell me your proposal is an insult. They say we should die with dignity rather than pollute our bloodline with alien genes. My scientists say the chances of success are small. My advisors say I should send you away and let nature take its course." She paused. "But I am a mother before I am a queen. I had 3 daughters. Beautiful girls with silver skin and curious minds. The plague took them all before they reached adulthood. I held each of them as they died. I felt their hearts stop. I buried them in the garden, outside this palace." Her voice cracked slightly. "A mother should not outlive her children. Yet here I sit, alone, watching my entire species follow them into the grave." Do-hyun felt his throat tighten. "I cannot imagine that pain." "No," Velith agreed. "You cannot. But you have known loss. I see it in your eyes." He nodded slowly. "My sister. Her name was Minji. She died in an accident when I was 22. A transport crash on Earth. They never found her body. You joined the space program to escape the memories. Partly. Also because she loved the stars as much as I did." Velith was quiet for a moment. Then she spoke again, her voice barely above a whisper. "I am going to ask you something terrible. I have no right to ask it. You can refuse, and I will not blame you. But I must ask, because I have no other choice." Do-hyun waited. "I need a human male to father the next generation of Kalari royalty," Velith said. "Your doctor's research suggests that human and Kalari genetics can combine successfully, but it cannot be just any human. The royal bloodline must continue. The father must be someone who understands what is at stake. Someone who will stay and help raise these children. Someone who will become part of our world." She met his eyes. "I am asking you, Park Do-hyun. Will you help us?" The words hit him like a physical blow. He had suspected something like this might come, but hearing it spoken aloud was different. His mind raced through 1,000 objections. He was a scientist, not a prince. He had a life on Earth. He barely knew this woman, this world, this species. But then he thought of the empty cities, the silent nurseries, the paintings of funeral processions. "I need to think," he said finally. "Of course," Velith nodded. "Take all the time you need. But know this. I am not asking you to love me. I am not asking you to be my husband. In the way your species understands the word, I am asking you to be a partner in survival. Nothing more." She paused. "But nothing less. Either." Do-hyun returned to his quarters and did not sleep. He walked to his window and looked out at the alien city. Somewhere in the distance, a Kalari child was playing on a balcony, one of the last children of a dying race. He thought about his sister. She had always believed in helping others. She volunteered at hospitals and shelters. She gave money to strangers. Once, She had run into a burning building to save a dog. "What's the point of living if you don't help people?" she used to say. He thought about his own life, his research, his quiet apartment on Earth, the awards on his shelf that meant nothing when he came home to an empty room. He thought about Queen Velith, kneeling in a garden, burying her daughters one by one. The next morning, he returned to the Queen's private chamber. "I will do it," he said. "But I have conditions." Velith's eyes widened slightly. "First, I undergo full medical testing. I need to know that this is truly possible, not just theoretical. Second, I want to learn your language and customs. If I'm going to be part of this, I need to understand your people. Third, any children we have will be raised, knowing both their heritages. They will learn human history, as well as Kalari history. They will know where they come from." The Queen studied him for a long moment. Then, slowly, she smiled. It was a small smile, tired and cautious, but real. "Those are wise conditions," she said. "I accept them all." And so it began. The testing took 3 months. Do-hyun was examined by every doctor in the palace. His blood was analyzed, his genes mapped, his body measured in ways he didn't understand. Yuna oversaw the human side of the process, working alongside Kalari scientists, who slowly moved from suspicion to respect. The results came back positive. Compatibility was confirmed. Healthy offspring were possible. But somewhere during those 3 months, something unexpected happened. Do-hyun found himself looking forward to his daily meetings with the Queen. He enjoyed their conversations about philosophy and science. He laughed at her dry sense of humor. He felt comfortable in her presence in a way he had not felt comfortable with anyone since his sister died. And when Velith looked at him, her black eyes no longer seemed cold. They seemed warm. They seemed hopeful. Neither of them spoke of love. Neither of them needed to. Some things do not require words. The months passed like water flowing through a stream. Do-hyun moved permanently into the palace, leaving his small cabin on the horizon behind. The diplomatic mission had officially ended, but he stayed. Earth received reports of his decision with mixed reactions. Some called him a hero. Others called him a traitor. He did not care about either opinion. His days fell into a rhythm. Mornings were spent with Kalari language tutors, learning the complex sounds and grammar of their speech. Afternoons were for medical appointments and cultural lessons. Evenings belonged to the Queen. They would meet in her private garden, a small space filled with strange flowers that glowed softly in the darkness. Velith would tell him stories of Kalari history while they walked among the plants. Do-hyun would share memories of Earth, describing blue oceans and green forests to someone who had never seen such things. "Your world sounds chaotic," Velith said one evening. "So many different nations, languages, cultures. How do you not destroy yourselves?" Do-hyun laughed. "We almost have. Many times. Wars, pollution, disease. But we always find a way to survive. That is what interests me about humans," Velith admitted. "You are fragile. Your bodies are weak. Your lifespans are short. Yet you refuse to surrender. You fight against the universe itself. Maybe that's because we have nothing to lose," Do-hyun said. "When you're small and weak, you learn to be stubborn." Velith smiled at that. Her smiles were still rare, but they came more often now. One night, she took him to the memorial gardens. It was a vast field of black obsidian pillars, each one covered with names carved in silver. The pillars stretched as far as the eye could see, disappearing into the mist. "Every name is a child who was never born," Velith explained. "We add new pillars each year. The field grows larger while our population grows smaller." Do-hyun walked among the pillars in silence. The weight of the place pressed down on him. Millions of names. Millions of lives that would never exist. "Where are your daughters?" he asked quietly. Velith led him to a small clearing in the center of the garden. 3 pillars stood there, separate from the others. Their surfaces were not black, but deep purple, the color of royalty. Tellin, Myreth, and Solon, Velith said, touching each pillar gently. My firstborn, my middle child, and my youngest. They were curious girls, always asking questions, always wanting to explore. Her voice trembled. Tellin wanted to be a scientist like you. She would have been good at it. Trembles. Trembles. Do-Hyun placed his hand on the pillar next to hers. Tell me about them. So she did. She talked for hours, sharing memories of birthdays and arguments and quiet moments. She told him about the time Myrith tried to adopt a wild animal and hid it in her room for 3 days. She told him about Solon's terrible singing voice and how she performed for crowds anyway, fearless and joyful. She told him about Tellin's last words, whispered through cracked lips as the plague took her. Thank you for staying with me, Mother. I was scared of the dark. When Velith finished speaking, her cheeks were wet with silver tears. Do-Hyun had never seen a Kalari cry before. He did not know what to say. So instead, he did what felt natural. He put his arms around her and held her tight. She stiffened at first. Physical affection was not common among the Kalari. But then she relaxed into his embrace, and they stood together in the Garden of the Dead. 2 broken people finding comfort in each other. I lost my sister when I was young, Do-Hyun said into her hair. Her name was Minji. She was my best friend. After she died, I thought I would never feel whole again. I ran away to the stars, trying to escape the pain. Did it work? Velith asked. No. The pain followed me. It always does. He pulled back and looked into her eyes. But I learned something important. The pain never goes away, but it changes. It becomes part of you. And sometimes, if you're lucky, you find someone who understands. Velith reached up and touched his face. Her fingers were cool and smooth. I am glad you stayed, Park Do-Hyun, she said softly. So am I. The compatibility procedures began the following month. Kalari doctors worked alongside Yuna to ensure everything went perfectly. The process was clinical at first, cold and scientific, but somewhere along the way, it became something more. Do-Hyun and Velith began spending their nights together, not always for medical purposes, sometimes just to talk, sometimes just to lie beside each other in silence, listening to each other breathe. The loneliness that had haunted them both began to fade. The palace servants noticed the change. They whispered among themselves, surprised to see their queen smile. Some disapproved of the relationship. Others were simply curious. But most were quietly hopeful. General Torek was not among the hopeful. He was the queen's military commander, a tall Kalari with scars crossing his face from ancient battles. He had served the royal family for over a century and believed fiercely in Kalari tradition. When he learned of the hybrid breeding program, his face twisted with disgust. This is madness, he said during a council meeting. We are diluting our blood with alien filth. Better to die pure than survive as mongrels. Better to die? Velith replied coldly. You speak of death as if it were a gift. It is not. It is an ending. I will not let our people end. These children will not be our people, Torek spat. They will be something else. Something wrong. They will be alive, Velith said. Torek stormed out of the council chamber. Do-Hyun watched him go with a feeling of unease. He had seen that kind of hatred before, in history books about Earth's darkest times. Hatred like that did not simply disappear. It waited. It grew. 3 months later, Velith announced that she was pregnant. The news spread across the empire like wildfire. Some celebrated in the streets. Others protested outside the palace gates. But most simply waited, holding their breath, hoping for a miracle. Do-Hyun stayed by Velith's side through the pregnancy. He held her hand during the difficult nights. He read to her when she could not sleep. He learned Kelari lullabies and sang them badly, making her laugh. "You have a terrible voice," she told him once. "I know," he admitted. "But Minji always said that love sounds good in any voice." Velith squeezed his hand. "Your sister was wise." The day of the birth arrived with spring rains. Do-hyun paced outside the medical chamber, his heart pounding. Hours passed. He heard sounds of pain and struggle. He heard the doctors calling to each other in urgent voices. And then he heard something else. A baby crying. The doors opened, and a doctor emerged with a small bundle in her arms. She handed it to Do-hyun, with trembling hands. "A daughter," the doctor said. "Healthy, strong." Do-hyun looked down at the tiny face. She had her mother's silver skin, smooth and shimmering. But her eyes, when they opened, were dark brown. Human eyes. "Hello, little one," he whispered. "Welcome to the universe." Behind him, more cries rose from the medical chamber. 2 more babies. 3 children in total. 2 daughters and a son. Queen Velith named them in the old Kelari tradition. But she also gave each child a human name, chosen by Do-hyun. The eldest daughter would be called Nari. The son would be Jimin. The youngest daughter would be Soha. 3 lives. 3 hopes. 3 bridges between 2 worlds. Do-hyun held his children and wept. Not from sadness. From something he had not felt in years. Joy. The children grew faster than anyone expected. Kelari doctors watched in amazement as the hybrid babies reached milestones ahead of schedule. They were smaller than pure Kelari infants, but their bodies were stronger, more adaptable. By 6 months, they were crawling. By 10 months, they were walking. Nari, the eldest, was the most curious of the 3. She inherited her mother's sharp mind and her father's endless questions. She would grab anything within reach and study it with intense focus. Her dark eyes seemed to absorb everything they saw. Jimin was quieter. He preferred to observe before acting. He would sit in his nursery for hours, watching the servants move about their duties, learning their patterns. When he finally did something, it was always deliberate and precise. Soha was the wild one. She laughed constantly, a sound that echoed through the palace halls like music. She had no fear of anything. She climbed furniture, chased animals, and once nearly gave a guard a heart attack by crawling toward a ceremonial fire. Do-hyun spent most of his days chasing after her. "She has your stubbornness," Velith said one evening, watching Do-hyun retrieve Soha from the top of a bookshelf. "And your determination," he replied, setting the giggling child on the floor. A dangerous combination. Word of the healthy hybrid children spread across the Kelari Empire. Scientists from distant worlds sent requests to study them. News broadcasts showed images of the royal family, commenting on the children's unusual appearance. Opinion was divided. Many saw hope in those small, silver faces with human eyes. Others saw only pollution of their ancient bloodline. General Torek remained the loudest voice against the hybrids. He gave speeches to his soldiers, calling the children abominations. He met in secret with other traditionalist leaders, forming an alliance of those who rejected the new future. "This is not progress," he declared in a private meeting. "This is surrender. We are handing our civilization to aliens. The Queen believes it is our only path to survival," one of his supporters said. "Then the Queen is wrong." Torek's scarred face twisted with contempt. "She has been corrupted by the human. He has clouded her judgment with soft words and alien tricks. She no longer serves our people. She serves him." The conspiracy grew in the shadows. Torek was careful. He never acted openly against the throne, but his followers multiplied, spreading through the military and government like a disease. Do-hyun sensed the tension. He noticed how certain servants avoided his gaze. He saw how guards whispered when he walked past. He reported his concerns to Velith, but she dismissed them. "Torek is a warrior from the old ways," she said. He will grumble, but he will not act. He has served my family for too long. Do-hyun was not so sure. Meanwhile, the hybrid children continued to develop in remarkable ways. When Nari turned 3, she showed signs of telepathy, a rare gift among the Kalari. But her telepathy was different, stronger. She could sense emotions from across the palace. I feel sad, she told her father one morning. But not my sad. Someone else's sad. Far away, Yuna, who had stayed on Calaris Prime to continue her research, was fascinated. The human genetic adaptability is enhancing their Kalari traits, she explained to Do-hyun. It's not suppressing anything, it's amplifying it. Jimin showed similar abilities. He could move small objects with his mind. Another Kalari gift. But he could move them faster and farther than any pure Kalari child his age. Only Soha seemed ordinary in terms of special abilities. But she made up for it with physical prowess. At 4 years old, she could outrun children twice her age. She was stronger, faster, and more coordinated than anyone expected. The human survival instinct, Yuna theorized. It's expressing itself physically in her. She's built to survive. News of the children's remarkable abilities could not be hidden. Scientists published reports. Journalists wrote stories. Soon, the entire empire knew that the hybrid children were not just surviving, they were thriving. Other Kalari began asking questions. If the royal hybrids were so successful, could the same process work for common citizens? Could ordinary Kalari have children with human partners? The answer, according to the scientists, was yes. Queen Velith made the announcement personally. The hybrid program would be open to all citizens. Any Kalari who wished to have children with a human partner could apply. Humans who volunteered would be brought from Earth and treated as honored guests. The response was overwhelming. Thousands of Kalari applied within the first week. The program had to be expanded. More humans were requested from Earth, and for the first time in 40 years, the population charts stopped declining. Do-hyun became a symbol. The Kalari called him Vel-shan, which meant life-bringer in their language. Statues were built in his honor. His face appeared on murals and screens across the empire. Children who had never met him spoke his name with reverence. He found the attention uncomfortable. He was just a scientist who had fallen in love with a queen. He had not set out to become a legend. You don't get to choose what history makes of you, Velith told him. You can only choose what you do. History tells its own stories. Ever, Do-hyun focused on what mattered most. His family. He taught Nari about Earth's oceans and showed her pictures of whales. He played strategy games with Jimin, losing more often than he won. He raced Soha through the palace gardens, laughing as she left him in the dust. Tell us about Aunt Minji, Nari asked one night, as Do-hyun tucked the children into bed. He paused. He had told them about his sister before, but they always wanted to hear more. Your Aunt Minji had the brightest smile in the world, he said, sitting on the edge of Nari's bed. When she walked into a room, everyone felt happier. She believed that people were mostly good, that the universe wanted us to help each other. Do you believe that, Father? Jimin asked. Do-hyun thought for a moment. I didn't used to. After she died, I thought the universe was cold and uncaring. But then I came here. I met your mother. I had you 3. He smiled. Now I think Minji was right. The universe does want us to help each other. We just have to be brave enough to try. Soha was already asleep, her breathing soft and peaceful. Do-hyun kissed each child on the forehead and left the nursery. In the corridor outside, Velith was waiting. You are a good father, she said, taking his hand. I had no idea what I was doing at first, he admitted. I still don't, most days. None of us do. That's the secret of parenthood. She leaned against him. But we figure it out together. They walked together toward their chambers, hand in hand. Outside the windows, The 3 moons of Calaris Prime rose over the horizon. The city below glowed with lights. For the first time in decades, the future looked bright, but in the shadows of distant military bases, General Torek watched the same moons rise. His hands were clenched. His jaw was tight. Around him, his loyalists waited for orders. The Queen has named her eldest hybrid as heir to the throne, one of them reported. The announcement will be made at the Festival of Stars next month. Torek's eyes burned with cold fire. Then we have 1 month, he said quietly. 1 month to save our people from this corruption. He turned to face his followers. Prepare the fleet. When the moment comes, we will strike. The hybrid abominations will die. The alien will die. And if the Queen resists... He paused, his voice dropping to a whisper. Then, she will die too. The soldiers saluted. The conspiracy entered its final phase, and on the other side of the planet, sleeping peacefully in her bed, Princess Nari dreamed of darkness. The Festival of Stars was the most important celebration in the Kilari calendar. For 3 days, the Empire honored its ancestors, celebrated its achievements, and looked toward the future. This year's festival carried special significance. Queen Velith would officially name Princess Nari as heir to the throne. The palace was decorated with lights and flowers. Visitors came from across the 12 worlds, filling the capital city with crowds and excitement. Do-Hyun watched the preparations with growing unease. Something felt wrong, but he could not explain what. You worry too much, Velith said, straightening his ceremonial robes. Torek has been quiet for months. Perhaps he has finally accepted the new way. Perhaps, Do-Hyun replied. But he did not believe it. The opening ceremony took place in the Grand Plaza, a vast public space that could hold millions. Queen Velith stood on a raised platform, flanked by her children. Do-Hyun stood slightly behind, still uncomfortable with his role in public events. People of the Kilari Empire, Velith announced, her voice carried by amplifiers to every corner of the city. For 40 years, we have faced extinction. We have watched our numbers dwindle. We have buried our hopes along with our children. But, today, I stand before you with news that changes everything. She gestured toward Nari, who stepped forward. The young princess was 7 years old now, tall for her age, with silver skin and dark human eyes. She carried herself with quiet confidence. My daughter, Princess Nari, will be the next ruler of our empire, Velith declared. She carries the blood of 2 worlds. She represents our future. A future where life continues, where children are born, where hope survives. The crowd erupted in cheers. Most of them, anyway. Do-Hyun noticed pockets of silence, groups who stood with crossed arms and cold expressions. He noticed how certain guards were not watching the Queen. They were watching the rooftops. Something is wrong, he muttered. Then the explosion came. A ball of fire erupted on the far side of the plaza. Screams filled the air. The crowd scattered in panic. More explosions followed, forming a ring around the platform, trapping the royal family inside. Soldiers appeared on the rooftops. They wore the uniforms of the Kilari military, but their insignia had been changed. They bore the symbol of a broken crown. Torek's mark. Citizens of the Empire, a voice boomed from the speakers. It was Torek himself, standing on a balcony overlooking the chaos. The Queen has betrayed us. She has corrupted our bloodline with alien filth. The hybrid creatures she calls children are abominations. Today, we cleanse our world of this disease. The rebel soldiers raised their weapons. Get down, Do-Hyun shouted, throwing himself over his children. Energy blasts struck the platform, shattering stone and sending debris flying. The loyal palace guards formed a protective circle, but they were outnumbered. One by one, they fell. We need to move, Velith said, her voice calm despite the chaos. There's a tunnel beneath the platform. It leads to the palace. They ran. Do-hyun carried Soha in one arm and held Jimin's hand with the other. Nari ran beside her mother, her face pale but determined. Behind them, the sounds of battle continued. The tunnel was dark and narrow. Ancient dust filled the air. They ran for what felt like hours, until finally they emerged in the palace cellars. "We should be safe here," Velith said, catching her breath. "The palace defenses will hold." But the words had barely left her mouth when alarms began to scream. "The palace has been breached," an automated voice announced. "Security failure in sectors 7, 12, and 15. Torek's forces were already inside. Velith turned to Do-hyun, her black eyes filled with fear. "Take the children. Go to the emergency shuttle bay. There's a ship there that can take you to the human fleet." "I'm not leaving you," Do-hyun said. "You must." She grabbed his shoulders. "Our children are more important than either of us. They are the future. You have to protect them." "Mother?" "No," Nari cried. Velith knelt and hugged her daughter tight. "Be brave, my star. Take care of your brother and sister. I will find you when this is over. Promise?" Velith hesitated. Then she smiled and kissed Nari's forehead. "I promise. I promise." She handed Do-hyun a small device. "This will open the shuttle bay. Now go. I will buy you time." She ran toward the sounds of fighting without looking back. Do-hyun wanted to follow her. Every part of him screamed to stay and fight, but he looked at his children, at their terrified faces, and he knew what he had to do. "Stay close to me," he said. "Don't let go." They moved through the palace, avoiding the main corridors where sounds of battle echoed. Do-hyun knew these halls well. After years of living here, he guided his family through servant passages and forgotten rooms. They were almost at the shuttle bay when the assassins found them. 3 Kalari warriors stepped out of the shadows. They wore black armor and carried energy blades. Their eyes showed no mercy. "The abominations," one of them said. "General Torek wants them dead." Do-hyun pushed his children behind him. "You'll have to go through me." The assassins laughed. "A human? You're nothing. A weak, pathetic creature." Something changed in Do-hyun then. He thought of his sister, who had run into a burning building without hesitation. He thought of his ancestors, who had survived ice ages and plagues and wars. He thought of his children, trembling behind him. A human might be weak. A human might be fragile. But a human protecting their family was something else entirely. The first assassin charged. Do-hyun moved without thinking, his body remembering training from years ago. He ducked under the energy blade and grabbed the Kellari's arm. With a twist and a pull, he sent the warrior crashing into the wall. The second assassin swung. Do-hyun felt the blade graze his shoulder, burning through cloth and skin. The pain was intense, but he ignored it. He caught the assassin's wrist, twisted, and heard bones snap. The Kellari screamed and dropped the blade. The third assassin hesitated. That moment of hesitation was enough. Do-hyun grabbed a fallen blade and drove it forward. The assassin fell. 2 down. 1 struggling to rise. Do-hyun stood over the first assassin, the energy blade humming in his hand. Blood dripped from his wounded shoulder. His breathing was ragged, but his eyes burned with something primal, something ancient. "Tell your general," he said quietly, "that humans protect their own." He knocked the assassin unconscious and turned to his children. Nari was staring at him with wide eyes. Jimin looked pale. Soha was crying softly. "Father," Nari whispered. "You're hurt. You're hurt." "I'm fine," Do-hyun said, though the world was starting to spin. "We need to keep moving." They reached the shuttle bay 5 minutes later. The emergency ship was small but fast. Do-hyun loaded his children inside and started the launch sequence. "Where are we going?" Jimin asked. "To find help." Do-hyun replied. To find people who can stop this. The shuttle rose from the palace and shot into the sky. Below, Do-hyun could see fires burning across the capital. Torik's rebellion had spread faster than anyone expected. 3 worlds had already declared loyalty to the rebels. As the shuttle broke through the atmosphere, Do-hyun's vision began to blur. The wound on his shoulder was worse than he thought. He managed to set the autopilot toward human space before collapsing against the controls. The last thing he heard before losing consciousness was Nari's voice. Surprisingly calm. Don't worry, father. I'll guide us. I can feel the way. Her small hand touched his cheek. You saved us. Now let me help you. Darkness took him. But even in that darkness, he felt hope. His daughter's voice was strong. Her spirit was unbroken. They were not defeated yet. The distress signal reached Earth 3 days after the uprising began. It was weak, garbled by distance and damage. But the message was clear. Kelaris Prime had fallen to rebels. The royal family was in danger. One of their own was trapped in an alien civil war. Admiral Choi Sun-woo read the report in his office aboard the Earth Defense Station. He was 62 years old, a veteran of 3 colonial conflicts, and the youngest admiral in the fleet's history. His hair had gone gray, but his eyes were still sharp. Park Do-hyun, he muttered, looking at the file. The Lifebringer. He remembered the controversy when Do-hyun had first decided to stay on Kelaris Prime. Politicians had argued for weeks about what it meant. Was he a traitor? A hero? A fool in love? In the end, it didn't matter. He was still a human citizen. Sun-woo called an emergency meeting of the fleet commanders. The Kelari Civil War is not our fight, one admiral argued. We should stay out of alien politics. One of our people is in danger, Sun-woo replied. That makes it our fight. The rebels have 3 worlds and half the Kelari military. We don't have the ships to match them. R1. The rebels have 3 worlds. Sun-woo stood and looked out the window at the stars. Do you know what makes humans different from every other species in the galaxy? We don't calculate odds. We don't measure what's possible. When our people are in danger, we act. He turned back to the table. I'm taking a fleet to Kelaris Prime. Anyone who wants to join me, be at the launch bay in 6 hours. Anyone who doesn't. He shrugged. Stay here and watch history happen without you. 47 ships answered the call. It was the largest human armada ever assembled. Battle cruisers, destroyers, carriers, and support vessels formed a line that stretched for miles. Their crews were young and old, experienced and rookie, united by a single purpose. Bring their people home. The journey to Kelaris Prime took 2 weeks. During that time, Sun-woo received updates from the war zone. Queen Valith had escaped the palace and was leading a resistance from hidden bases. Do-hyun and the children had been rescued by a loyalist patrol and were safe on a secret moon. But the rebels controlled the capital and were advancing on remaining loyalist positions. General Torik has declared himself emperor, an intelligence officer reported. He's ordered the execution of all hybrid children across the empire. Thousands have been killed. Sun-woo's jaw tightened. Then, we don't just have a rescue mission. We have a war to win. The human fleet arrived at Kelaris Prime on a Tuesday morning. They emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming in the light of the alien sun. Torik's rebel fleet was waiting for them. The rebels had over 100 ships, more than twice the human numbers. Their vessels were larger, more heavily armed, equipped with technology far beyond anything Earth had developed. By any logical calculation, the humans should have retreated. Instead, Admiral Sun-woo opened a channel to his fleet. Today we face an enemy who thinks we are weak, he said, his voice broadcast to every ship. They think that because we are smaller, we will break. They think that because we are younger, we will run. He paused. They are wrong. We are human. Our ancestors crossed oceans in wooden boats. They climbed mountains that touched the sky. They survived plagues that killed half our species. They crawled out of every disaster the universe threw at them and said, "Is that all you've got?" Today, we add another chapter to that story. Today, we show the galaxy what happens when you threaten our people. He drew a breath. All ships, attack. The battle that followed would be studied in military academies for centuries. Human ships should have been destroyed in minutes. Instead, they fought like demons. Captain Han So-yun commanded a destroyer called the Brave Spirit. When her weapons failed, she rammed her ship into a rebel cruiser, crippling both vessels. She survived and led her crew in boarding the enemy ship, capturing it through hand-to-hand combat. Lieutenant Kim Tae-hyung flew a fighter squadron called the Ghost Wings. They weaved through rebel formations like smoke, hitting critical systems and vanishing before the enemy could respond. By the battle's end, they had destroyed 12 ships and damaged 30 more. But no story from that day was told more often than the last stand of Sergeant Lee Ji-won. Ji-won was a Marine, part of a boarding team sent to capture a rebel command ship. The mission went wrong from the start. Most of her squad was killed in the initial assault. She found herself alone in a corridor, cut off from reinforcements, with enemy soldiers closing in from both directions. Any reasonable soldier would have surrendered. Ji-won was not reasonable. She barricaded herself behind a maintenance station and started shooting. Hour after hour, she held that corridor. Kalari warriors charged her position in waves. She cut them down with precision fire. When her weapon ran out of ammunition, she picked up fallen enemy guns. When those ran dry, she used a knife. When the knife broke, she used her fists. 16 hours. 38 enemy soldiers killed. When reinforcements finally reached her, she was still standing, covered in blood that was not her own, surrounded by bodies. "What kept you?" she asked, before collapsing from exhaustion. The rebels broke. Their formations scattered. Ships tried to retreat, only to be hunted down by human pursuers. Torek's flagship made a desperate jump to hyperspace. But 3 human destroyers followed it and brought it down in a distant asteroid field. General Torek was captured alive. He was found hiding in an escape pod, his dreams of empire shattered. When the human Marines dragged him out, he looked at them with confusion and fear. "How?" he whispered. "How did you do this? Your ships are inferior. Your technology is primitive. How did you defeat us?" The Marine commander, a young woman named Yoon Sira, smiled grimly. "You made a mistake," she said. The liberation of Kelleris Prime took 3 more days. Human forces worked alongside loyalist Kelleri to free occupied cities. The hybrid children who had been hiding were brought out of shelters, reunited with their parents, given medical care. Queen Velith emerged from her hidden base and addressed her people. She was thinner than before, her robes torn, her silver skin dimmed by exhaustion. But her voice was strong. "The rebellion is over," she announced. "But it has taught us something important. We cannot survive alone. Today, we were saved by humanity, by people who crossed the stars to help us, by warriors who fought and died for children who were not their own." She paused, her black eyes shining with emotion. "From this day forward, the Kalari Empire and the Human Federation will be allies, not just in politics, but in blood. We will build our future together, and we will never forget what was sacrificed to make that future possible." Do-hyun watched the speech from a medical bay on one of the human ships. His shoulder was healing. His children sat beside him, alive and safe. Nari held his hand with the grip of someone who had seen too much, too young. "Is it over, father?" she asked. Do-hyun looked at the screen, where Velith stood tall against the sky. "The war is over," he said. "But the real work is just beginning." Outside the window, human and Kalari ships floated side by side, their lights blinking in the darkness like stars being born. 2 species, 1 future, and a story that was only beginning. 10 years had passed since the rebellion, The galaxy had changed in ways no one could have predicted. The Kalari Empire, once dying, now teemed with life. Hybrid children numbered in the millions, their silver skin and human eyes becoming a common sight on every world. Cities that had stood empty were rebuilt and filled with laughter. The memorial gardens stopped growing. Princess Nari stood before a mirror in her private chambers, studying her reflection. She was 17 now, tall and graceful, with her mother's elegant features and her father's thoughtful eyes. Today was her coronation day. Today she would become queen. "You look nervous," a voice said behind her. She turned to find her father standing in the doorway. Do-hyun was 51 years old now, his hair touched with gray, his face lined with the marks of experience. But his smile was the same as always, warm and encouraging. "I am nervous," Nari admitted. "What if I'm not ready? What if I fail?" "Clies." Do-hyun walked over and placed his hands on her shoulders. "When I first came to this world, I was terrified. I was a scientist who suddenly had to become a diplomat, a father, a symbol. I had no idea what I was doing. But you succeeded. I survived," he corrected. "Success came later, slowly, through a lot of mistakes. You'll make mistakes too. That's how we learn." He squeezed her shoulders gently. "But you won't make them alone. Your mother will guide you. Your brother and sister will support you. And I will always, always be here for you." Nari hugged him tight, pressing her face against his chest like she had done as a child. "Thank you, Father, for everything. Thank your Aunt Minji," he said softly. "She taught me that helping others is the only thing that really matters. I just passed that lesson on." The coronation took place in the Grand Plaza, rebuilt after the rebellion and more beautiful than ever. Millions attended in person. Billions more watched through broadcasts across both empires. Human dignitaries sat alongside Kalari nobles. Ships from both species filled the sky, their flags flying side by side. Queen Velith walked slowly to the ceremonial platform. She moved with dignity, though age had begun to take its toll. Her silver skin had dimmed over the years. Her steps were not as sure as they once were, but her eyes still held fire. "People of the Kalari Empire," she began. "People of the Human Federation. We gather today to witness a moment that, 10 years ago, seemed impossible. We gather to crown a new queen." She looked at her daughter with pride. "Princess Nari was born during our darkest hour. She represents everything we fought for, everything we believed in. She carries the blood of two worlds in her veins. She is not just Kalari. She is not just human. She is something new, something better." Nari climbed the steps to stand before her mother. The ancient crown of the Kalari Empire rested on a cushion between them, glittering with gems that had been passed down for thousands of years. "Do you accept the responsibilities of the throne?" Velith asked formally. "Do you swear to protect your people, to guide them with wisdom, to lead them toward a future of peace and prosperity?" "I do," Nari replied, her voice steady. Velith lifted the crown and placed it gently on her daughter's head. "Then rise, Queen Nari, first of her name, daughter of two worlds, guardian of the future." The crowd erupted in celebration. Cheers rose from millions of voices, human and Kalari blending together in joy. Music played, flowers were thrown, children danced in the streets, but the ceremony was not over. Queen Velith raised her hand, and silence fell. "There is one more thing I must do," she said. "One more truth I must speak." She turned and walked down the steps of the platform. The crowd parted before her. She moved slowly, deliberately, until she reached a certain spot in the audience. She stopped in front of Park Do-hyun. He stood among the other witnesses, dressed simply, trying to blend in as he always did. He looked confused as Velith approached him. "What are you doing?" he whispered. She did not answer. Instead, she did something that shocked everyone watching. Queen Velith, ruler of the Kalari Empire for over a century, knelt before a human. Gasps rippled through the crowd. This had never happened in Kalari history. No monarch had ever knelt to anyone, let alone an alien. "My descendants," Velith said, her voice carrying across the plaza through the amplifiers. "Born of a human." She looked up at Do-hyun, her black eyes glistening with silver tears. 20 years ago, you came to our world as a stranger. You could have left when you saw our suffering. Many would have. But you chose to stay. You chose to give us hope. Her voice grew stronger. "You gave us children when our wombs were empty. You stood beside me when my generals wanted me dead. You fought assassins with your bare hands to protect our family. You brought your people across the stars to save us when all seemed lost." She took his hands in hers. "My people called you primitive. They called you weak. They called you alien." She smiled through her tears. "They were wrong. You taught us how to survive. You taught us how to change. You taught us how to live." She rose to her feet but did not release his hands. "I have loved you for 20 years, she said. "I have been proud to call you my partner. Today, before all our peoples, I say what I should have said long ago." She turned to face the crowd, pulling Do-hyun to stand beside her. "This man is not just the father of my children. He is the father of our future. Without him, we would be dust and memory. He saved us all." The crowd was silent for a long moment. Then, somewhere in the back, a single voice began to cheer. Others joined. The cheering spread like fire, growing louder and louder, until the sound was deafening. Human and Kellery voices rose together, crying out the name that had become legend. Velshan. Life-bringer. Hope-maker. Father of the future. Do-hyun stood in the center of it all, overwhelmed. He looked at Velith, then at his daughter on the throne, then at his son and youngest daughter, cheering in the crowd. He thought of his sister, who had always believed in helping others. He thought of the scared scientist who had arrived on this world 2 decades ago, expecting nothing but research data. He had come here to study alien life. He had found a family instead. Queen Nari descended from her throne and joined her parents. Jimin and Soha pushed through the crowd to embrace them. For one perfect moment, the royal family stood together, surrounded by love. "Well, father," Nari said with a slight smile. "How does it feel to be a legend?" Nari. Do-hyun laughed, wiping tears from his eyes. "It feels like I need to sit down," he admitted. Everyone laughed. Even Velith, the ancient queen, the dignified ruler, laughed with pure joy. Above them, the sky filled with fireworks, human and Kellery designs intertwining in bursts of color. The celebration would continue for days. The story would be told for centuries. But for now, in this moment, there was only a family standing together. A human father. A Kalari mother. 3 children who carried the future in their blood. And a universe that had learned something important. Never underestimate humanity. Never doubt what they will do for the people they love. Because when the darkness comes, when all hope seems lost, humans do not surrender. They fight. They survive. They find a way. And sometimes, against all odds, they save everyone